Relive the fall of Singapore 80 years ago in a new World War II exhibition featuring personal accounts of survivors. Through immersive experiences, visitors are invited to step into the shoes of those who lived through the war and reflect on how it was impacted after them. Sherlyn Sia tells us more.
It's the year 1942. As Japanese forces invade, there's chaos in Singapore. Before long, the British forces surrender and the country falls. In the National Museum of Singapore's newest wartime exhibition, there's a grim display of over 200 artefacts unearthed from a Sook Ching burial site. They include keys, wallets and watches of the Chinese soldiers and civilians massacred there. There's also an area featuring notices of people trying to locate their loved ones with audio reenactments.
We actually pulled together the diverse accounts and multiple perspectives of the war memories, and we hope that our audience can actually spark conversations across different generations, share memories as well of the experience, and reflect on the impact of the war and the relevance of the war in present times. Of course, not forgetting that we shouldn't take peace for granted.
A lot of the exhibition focuses on the experiences of those who lived and died throughout the war, and augmented reality has been brought in to highlight this. This section features items salvaged from the shipwreck of the Empress of Asia, a former cruise ship that sank under air attack by the Japanese forces. Visitors can use their phone to scan the items here to take a look at what they used to look like, and the aim is to show that these are not just relics of the past, but that they meant a great deal to the people these belong to. Other interactive elements include a game for visitors to try making tactical decisions to defend Singapore. They can also sit in a remodeled room of the surrender table to view diary entries of what took place.
In one way, it is to get Singaporeans more acquainted, not just with what happened, but also, try to get them to situate themselves, in the chaos of surrender.
At the end, visitors are invited to share their reflections and are asked what they would like to see at an exhibition in 2042 to mark the 100th anniversary of the fall of Singapore.
And more on this exhibition, we're joined by Rachel Ng, who worked on this exhibition. I'm saying, we have access to technology, so we take it for granted that this will be multimedia, it will be immersive. But what is different about this World War II exhibition?
So I think what we're trying to do with this exhibition is really to go beyond sort of the story that we are more familiar with in terms of the battle and then the surrender, but also look at these events and then understand that these events aren't experienced as a single monolithic event, but really there are thousands of people who experienced it on the same day at the same time. So we're looking at different perspectives, and we really wanted to bring that out. So, for example, if you're talking about the Battle of Singapore, we know that these things happened on these days, but we also are looking at, civilian evacuees who were forced to flee their homes as the battles raged on, who weren't involved in the actual battle itself, but were affected by it, or local defense forces who were involved in these battles, whose stories are often sort of not as well known. So we really want to bring out some of these different perspectives and experiences to introduce to people and get them to sort of see how the past and the fall of Singapore is not something that is just like that, but it's also full of different kinds of understandings and perspectives.
Rachel, talk to us a little bit more about this emphasis on these different personal accounts that we're going to be seeing by ordinary Singaporeans who were involved, who were there at the time during World War II. Why has it taken so long? We're in 2022 now. Why has it taken this amount of time before we're seeing these relatively unexplored topics like the ones you just mentioned, the evacuation of civilians just the week before the surrender in 1942?
Well, it's the 80th anniversary and it's 80 years since the fall of Singapore. And I think every time that we revisit this, we realize that the fall of Singapore is a moment of significance, but it's a moment of significance that is different to a lot of people who experienced it, who come from different backgrounds or even different countries. And so with hindsight, we are able to really understand and pull at the threads of what makes up this event. And now we're not only looking at what happened, but also who it happened to and how these memories are passed on and handed down through the generations. So I guess when we revisited it in the beginning, just after the war and so on, there were different considerations that were going into this commemoration and this marking. And now we're moving more towards a people-based history. And who knows, in 20 years' time, when we reach the 100th anniversary of the war, what we will be looking at. So it's a constant sort of revisiting process, I think, of, looking back at this event and seeing what else, what other fragments that we pick up that really contribute to this landscape of memory of Singapore.
Rachel, in the report that we viewed before we crossed to you, our reporter was showing us the use of personal artefacts, of course, the huge element of pathos there as well. When you gather them, I take it would have to be very sensitive. You have to ask for permission. You have to decide how to show them and to decide some maybe that you might not want to feature. How did you go about doing this?
So I guess the idea of personal artifacts is that they are in and of themselves personal. So we were very lucky that, people actually reach out to the museum to tell us their personal stories. It's not something that, we can say for them. It's something that they have to say for themselves. So, for example, we had a family, Jeffrey Tan, who was a Singaporean writer. He wrote a memoir about his war experiences, and his family actually reached out to us to, offer some of his items for loan for this exhibition. And I felt like the act of that offering and the act of wanting to share that story was in itself an intergenerational memory or form of it. So we've been very privileged for that. We have had people who are reaching out to us to offer us these stories. But also, we're looking at our own personal collections, our national collection, to draw out some of these artifacts that have been previously donated to see what we can use to tell these stories and to draw out different maybe things that you might not have seen before in a World War II exhibition, but something that would help us to bring out this theme. For example, I think we're displaying a scrapbook by a man named Peter Chong, and so he's actually put together a scrapbook of pictures of people that he saw throughout the occupation, that he took pictures of and with, and you'll get, again, that sense of recording, and he put it together after the war. So again, these ideas of different perspectives that we are trying to draw out, and that's how we, I guess, select the artifacts to, contribute to the story.
Thanks, Rachel, for that fascinating story into this fascinating exhibition. Rachel Ng from the National Museum of Singapore. Dislocations, Memory and Meaning of the Fall of Singapore 1942 will run from this Saturday to the 29th of May.